What's up, boys, and that one girl who watches this every week? Yeah, you know who you are. I love you too, mum. And welcome to the Game Week 15 edition of Nile Nutmeg Starts and Sits. If you watched our previous videos, you'll notice that the video no longer sounds like it was recorded by a tin can. I'd been copping a lot of flack for my audio quality, and that world's largest student loan record isn't going to break itself, so I finally decided to take the plunge and buy a new $200 microphone. Come on! I know what you're thinking. His voice is so sexy. I would just melt if he talked to me in his native tongue. Well, kia ora, ladies. You're no longer hearing a filthy, low-key 128 kilobytes per second, but a crisp, clear 129 kilobytes per second. Unfortunately, according to the laws of conservation of quality, this means my content will now be shit, but you can only blame that on science. Right, on to this week's starts and sits. Our first start is Graziano Pelle. He may have looked like Graziano Pelle against Stoke, but that was an exceptional defense and can be distinguished as an outlier. Having had a week off football and doing God knows what, Pelle is back and ready to kill it for Southampton. Given how weak Manchester City's defence looked without Vincent Kompany, it was a real shame that Pelle didn't play, as Southampton may have actually come away with some points if he had. Although he isn't on set pieces, free kicks, or anything like that, Pelle does have a remarkable ability of getting them in at home, with 4 out of 6 of his goals and 3 out of 5 of his assists this season coming in home games. But that's not all! Aston Villa's defence must have joined an American gang recently, because they have been hemorrhaging goals without Jordi Amavi at left back. I'm not saying you can necessarily put this on any one person, but they have now conceded 14 goals in 5 games. You can feel confident streaming strikers who play Aston Villa, as they will always allow you to score. Moving on, Eden Hazard. Despite doing so well in the last 2 seasons that he got the world's most significant rugby stadium named after him, the only Hazard we've seen the Belgian pose this season is a potential career breakdown. 1 goal and 3 assists does suggest he's going nowhere, but with 39 key passes, Hazard is actually 3rd in the league in terms of chances created this season. Assuming Chelsea's conversion rate regresses like it should, Hazard should reach 0.34 assists per game. In addition, Hazard is still on penalties, which Chelsea have had 0 of this season compared to last season. He'll get more goals. In addition, it looks like Moreno has spotted Hazard's signals that he needs assistance and responded by playing him as a striker. While this didn't work against the Tottenham side who have only conceded 5 goals at home all season, and may have just been Moreno showing his strikers that the Costa standing up to him is too strong, it does make Hazard more worthy of consideration. Meanwhile, Bournemouth's defence looking capable of finding their identity away from home, with 18 goals conceded in 7 away games. Bournemouth should receive some joy by the 25th as first-choice centre-back Tommy Alf-Ick returns home for Christmas. But until then, they have to go the distance with backup backline, who are conceding 3 goals per away game. In addition, Bournemouth have conceded 4 penalties this season, the most of any Premier League team. Moving on, Chris Smalling. After 2 weeks in a row of telling people to sit the Manchester United defence and receiving death threats for it, for which I hold no animosity, a week has finally come where I can actually justify starting one of the best defences in the league. In addition, you should be wondering why I call this Chris Smalling instead of Manchester United defence. In yet another giant fuck you to fantasy owners, Louis van Gaal took Phil Jones out of his starting lineup and replaced him with 20-year-old Paddy McNair, who had previously played all of 44 minutes this season and still somehow conceded 2 goals. He also brought back Matteo Darmian, but only so people can assume that he's a valid option again, then watch Van Gaal crush their dreams like the children's movie supervillain that he is. With United's goalkeeper costing 5.6 mil and earning the same number of points per game as keepers who cost almost a mil less, you can do better in that position too. Fuck the haters. You want actual stats? United have conceded 1 goal at home all season. Boom, I'm done. That's it, I'm out. Yet another reason to buy into them is the fact that West Ham have just lost their second biggest defensive threat, Diafra Sakho. For proof, just look at West Ham's goal-scoring records. With Sakho as striker, they're averaging 2.09 goals per game, with Carroll at 0.67, despite 2 of his 3 games coming with Paya as a starter. I won't deny Carroll has 2 big strengths, but I just can't see how getting seriously injured and forcing clubs to spend exorbitant amounts of money on him will help him score here. On to our balls deep plays. First up's Dusan Tadic. I know a lot of you wanted Tadic him last week ahead of the Manchester City game, as 20,000 already have. But for those who stuck around, the payoff will be sweet. I've already mentioned how highly I rate Aston Villa's ability to protect their own goal, and how well Pelle does this week. Tadic is creating 3.25 chances per game, over 1 more than any other player in this team. Yes, he was only given 45 minutes in the game against City, but much like the number of inches required to please a woman, all you need is a half. For this week at least, playing Tadic is the best thing you could do, son. Moving on, Erik Lamela. Some of you may be hesitant to buy into obscure Tottenham players after last week's balls deep pick blanked against Chelsea, but it was my fault for forgetting that the sun doesn't rise in the west. Lamela is only in this section because he doesn't look like a footballer. He doesn't pass the eye test because he runs like a drunk baby who has so little control over his legs that he's just trying to get as far as he can before inevitably falling over. Looking at his underlying stats though, his ability to cut inside before shooting gives an expected goals of 0.34 per game and an expected assist of 0.37 per game. West Brom have conceded 13 goals in 7 home games, and even playing 4 centre-backs last week wasn't enough to pull his defence together. Will Lamela start? Does the Pope shit in the woods? Next up, Josh King and Junior Stanislas. Collectively, they have 0.5% ownership and costs 4.6 and 4.2 mil for a guaranteed starter. King is being played out of position as a striker despite being called a midfielder, and Stanislas is 6 foot and playing on the left wing against Ivanovic, whose side of the field acts like a celestial rift channeling the spirits of goal opportunities wherever he plays. The Chelsea defense's head game is weak, unlike your mom's. Stanislas is also running hot this week, coming off the very first headed goal of his career. As any veteran knows, King's strengths are encounters, ground moves, and really just locking your opponent down with any grappling combos. I mean, it's in goal scoring, and he can expect 0.37 goals per game, while Stanislas can expect 0.27 assists per game. As Bournemouth's cousin Smashmouth once said, somebody once told me Bournemouth were going to roll Chelsea. Stanislas is going to stall with his head. Next up, Xherdan Shaqiri. In the Premier League this season, he's created as many sparks as my Tinder profile, which is a shame because I had really high hopes for currently in a relationship, but if you like coleslaw and potato and gravy, I am looking for a side bitch. Taking company out of the City defense is like putting all of their players' hands in warm water overnight. You aren't going to end up with clean sheets. Someone from Stoke has to score for City to concede, the only exception being if this happens. And even that was company. Shaqiri has 0.9% ownership and 6.6 mil price tag. He has the highest shots and chances created of anyone in Stoke's team, and if anyone's going to do it, it's Quadzilla. Our first sit is Mesut Ozil, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one, but this week Arsenal's signature playmaker will give as much support as a windowsill. Arsenal aren't spectacular at home, with 8 goals scored in 6, against a team with 2 clean sheets in a row who played 5 at the back and 2 defensive midfielders in both fixtures. It's also worth noting that a large chunk of Ozil's assists this season have been from set pieces, yet only 3 out of 26 of the goals their opponents have conceded have been headers. Everyone else in your league will captain him this week, but are you sure you feel comfortable giving double points to a guy with an army of black cats walking across his lawn? Final sit is Stoke City defense. Aguero is back, and when he and De Bruyne play together, other teams fall apart. Our proof is against Bruges and Mönchengladbach. They scored 2 goals. Sunderland, 4 goals. West Ham, Spurs, and Liverpool, 1 goal. Against Newcastle, they also got 6 goals. But that's like driving a monster truck into a Jenga tower. That's held up by a toothpick, which doesn't believe in itself and doesn't understand the language its manager is shouting at it. It doesn't take Droopy Detective to figure that one out. On many occasions, we've seen Stoke fall to weak teams but land on their feet the next game, but this week we're going to see City walk their world. That's us for the week. If you like it, like, subscribe, show it to your friends. If you didn't like it, show it to your friends so they can laugh at me. I don't give a fuck. See you guys around.